Okay, Your Worship, we're live.
Okay, thank you, Brent. Good evening. I'd like to call the regular council meeting of Tuesday, April 14th to order through electronic participation, Zoom video conferencing streamed live by the Town of Cobourg YouTube channel. Could I have a seconder? Councillor Burkett, all in favor? Carried. Is there any additions to the agenda, Deputy Mayor?
So I assume we're not doing a moment of reflection, Your Worship?
No, we're not. We're going to proceed right through to additions.
Thank you. There is one addition to the agenda this evening. It's a notice of motion from Councillor Adam Bureau regarding the Cobourg Farmers Market operations. The action recommended is that matter be added to the agenda.
Seconder, Councillor Beatty, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Carried. Are there any disclosure of pecuniary interest members of council? Seeing none, I would like to then proceed to Mr. Larmer.
Sorry, Your Worship.
It's all right.
Next, Your Worship, we have the adoption of the previous meeting minutes of the regular council meeting on March 16th, 2020.
Okay, Deputy Mayor.
The action recommended is that council adopt the minutes of the regular council meeting held on March 16th, 2020.
Seconder, Councillor Darling, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Mr. Larmer?
Next, Your Worship, we have the adoption of special council meeting minutes, two of them held on March 23rd, 2020.
And Deputy Mayor?
And the action recommended is that council adopt the minutes of the two special meetings, council meetings held on March 23rd, 2020.
Seconder, Councillor Burkett, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Mr. Larmer, I believe we're down to, I believe there are no presentations, delegations. If you could just confirm that, please.
Yes, none received, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. So we're to reports to General Government Services. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. The first and only under General Government Services is the Committee of the Whole meeting notes held on Monday, April the 6th, 2020. The action recommended that council receive the notes of the Committee of the Whole meeting held on Monday, April the 6th, 2020 for information purposes.
Okay, seconder. Councillor Burkett, discussion? All in favor? Carried. We're proceeding now to Public Works, and that would be Councillor Darling.
Thank you, Worship. I have a memo from the Director of Public Works regarding the awarding of the reconstruction of Mathew Street tender CO-20-02 DPW. The action recommended that council receive the report from the Director of Public Works for information purposes.
Seconder. Councillor Beatty, discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Back to you, Councillor Darling.
Okay.
Item number
secondly,
2.
Number 2, I have a memo from the Director of Public Works regarding the cancellation of the Terry Fox Stormwater Management Bond Cleanout Tender, CO-19-29 DPW. The action recommended that council authorize the cancellation of the Terry Fox Stormwater Management Bond Cleanout Tender, CO-19-29 DPW, to be re-tendered for completion in 2021.
Seconder.
Sorry, I apologize, Your Worship.
I'm sorry.
There you go.
Oh, Councillor Barreau, thank you. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. We're into motions, therefore we're back to Deputy Mayor under General Government Services.
Deputy Mayor, you just have to unmute your,
I'm sorry,
Deputy Mayor needs to unmute her.
My
There we go.
apologies.
no
It's
problem.
moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Bureau. Whereas the committee of the whole meeting on April 6, 2020, Councillor considered a notice of motion from Mayor John Henderson regarding a Cobourg Municipal Council liaison representative to sit on the Transition House Emergency Shelter Board of Directors. Now therefore be it resolved that Councillor Nicole Beatty be appointed as Cobourg Council's liaison representative with no voting privileges and attend monthly board meetings or additional meetings as determined by the board chair. And further, that it may be necessary to have an alternate Cobourg council member attend Transition House board meetings, that Councillor Adam Bureau be appointed as the alternate council liaison with no voting privileges. And further, that the appointed Cobourg councillor and councillor alternate can update members of Cobourg Council, senior staff, media, and the public through regular council agenda, section 9 and 8, council coordinator announcements to assure communications are being shared about relevant initiatives. And further, that the Cobourg council member liaison position on the Transition House Board be reviewed by municipal council after 1 year, being April of 2020.
Sorry, just a slight correction, Deputy Mayor, would that be 2021?
My apologies, 2021.
Okay, thank you. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Against? Carried. Thank you. Looking at my agenda, we're off to you, Deputy Mayor, again, General Government Services, item number 2.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Bureau. Whereas at the committee of the whole meeting on April 6, 2020, Council considered an item of a special 2020 budget review meeting, review of the current situation related to COVID-19 on the town's municipal operating and capital budget. Now therefore be it resolved that Council hold a special 2020 budget review meeting. And this is a different date than what you see in front of on Thursday, May 14th at 1 p.m. to determine the status of revenues and expenses due to COVID-19 and what can be canceled, changed, or deferred to 2021 and beyond to address the shortfall the town may experience without a municipal tax increase.
Okay, and I believe you gave a seconder for that.
Yes,
So again, the only comment change to note clearly again is from May 11th to the 14th with the time starting at 1 p.m. Does anybody need this read again on members of council? Question, Councillor Beatty?
Thank you, your mayor. Through you to the deputy mayor. I appreciate it being moved to a different date. I'm teaching in the afternoon though of the 14th, and it's a webinar, so it's not something I can reschedule. Would you consider hosting it in the morning of the 14th?
I have no problem with that, Councillor Beatty. How about everyone else? How does that work for everyone else? The 14th, say at 9, is that okay, Councillor Beatty?
10 would be great, as I have a prep with the other teachers until 9:30. My apologies to be
I don't know.
difficult on that day.
It could take an hour, it could take 3. That might be a little tight. If you've got a webinar at 1, what time's your webinar? At 1?
If we start at 10, sorry to be the difficult one here, then I will just have to exit out in time for 1 o'clock.
Okay.
I recognize that.
How does that work for everyone else? 10 o'clock on the 14th? I see a lot of nods.
Thank
What
you,
do
everyone.
Yep. So I will, the motion will change from 1 o'clock to 10 a.m. the same day.
Okay. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Is there any need to be read again? It's just, I believe we're very clear in the 10 a.m.
Mhm. Yeah, that's
Hearing any other discussion from members of council? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment? Carried. And Deputy Mayor, I believe you'll have to read that just once more.
Well, it really wasn't an amendment, Your Worship. I read it as the motion. So
Okay, I'm sorry.
I don't believe I need to read it again. You would confirm with the clerk, but I read it as the motion.
It's okay, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. That's great news. Thank you. Moving on to Councillor Beatty under Planning and Development Services.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a motion from the Committee of the Whole regarding support for the Ontario Conservation Authorities. A question through you, Your Worship, to the clerk. Before I read the motion, does the mayor call a seconder, or do I read it first and then a seconder is called?
Yeah, you could put it on the floor and then the mayor can call a seconder for it.
Okay, thank you. All right. So, sorry, I was writing something and just opening my screen. So the motion from the Committee of the Whole regarding support for the Ontario Conservation Authorities, moved by myself. Whereas at the Committee of the Whole meeting on April 6, 2020, Council considered a notice of motion from myself, Councillor Beatty, regarding support for the Ontario Conservation Authorities. And whereas the town of Cobourg has recently declared a climate emergency, and whereas the conservation authorities have been protecting people and conserving and restoring watersheds with local communities for over 50 years, and whereas the town of Cobourg is a beneficiary of the important work done by the Ganaraska Region Conservation Authority, the GRCA, and whereas the town of Cobourg is a member of the GRCA and representation of its board of directors, and whereas under the direction of the board of directors, the GRCA provides programs and services addressing local priorities to the residents of Cobourg, including the regulation of development in river or stream valleys, wetlands, shorelands, and hazardous lands, and associated allowances, watershed management, watershed stewardship, flood and erosion management, environmental education, source water protection, outdoor education and recreation, and the preservation of terrestrial ecology and fisheries. And whereas the province of Ontario is currently reviewing the mandate and operations of conservation authorities, and whereas conservation authorities provide essential services to municipalities in their watersheds, and whereas smaller municipalities do not have the capacity or the financial resources to employ staff with the technical expertise that conservation authorities provide, therefore be it resolved that the town of Cobourg supports conservation authorities and the continuation of its critical programs and services included in their mandate. And further that during the review and consultations by the Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks, the province continues to allow municipalities' designated representatives to determine which programs will be delivered and considered mandatory, along with the use of a board-directed fair municipal levy as per the current regulation. Further that, the town of Cobourg encourages the province of Ontario to continue to support conservation authorities in the ongoing review and prioritize the allocation of adequate funding to support the core mandate of conservation authorities, including the GRCA. And further that this resolution is forwarded to Premier Doug Ford, the Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks, the Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry, MPP David Piccini, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, Conservation Ontario, Ganaraska Region Conservation Authority, and all other Ontario municipalities.
Seconder, Councillor Darling, discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Back to Councillor Darling under Public Works Service.
Just on mute, Councillor Darling.
Sorry, my apologies. The first motion is from the Committee of the Whole regarding reduction of public transit services for the town of Cobourg. Whereas the committee moved by myself, whereas the Committee of the Whole meeting on April 6, 2020, Council considered memo from the Director of Public Works regarding the proposed reduction in public transit service for the town of Cobourg. Now therefore be it resolved that Council approve a reduction in the transit service to suit the current demand as per option B for a savings of $7,500 per week as follows. Route 1 operating from 7:15 a.m. to 5:45 p.m. Monday to Friday. Route 2 operating 7:15 a.m. to 9:45 a.m. and 3:30 p.m. to 5:45 p.m. Monday to Friday. Route 1 and 2 operating on Saturdays from 8:45 a.m. to 3:45 p.m. Wheels service operating from 6:45 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Monday to Friday. Wheels operating on Saturdays from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. No service for conventional or wheels transit no Sunday service for conventional wheels transit. Further, that council delegate authority to the interim chief administrative officer to re-implement regular transit services incrementally or fully when required during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Seconder. Councillor Burkett, discussion. Start with Councillor Chorley, then I'll go to the deputy mayor.
Thank you. I didn't get a chance to share my comments on this item during the committee of the whole last week because I had a little bit of technical difficulties and my screen froze temporarily. But what I wanted to say is that I'm comfortable with the changes in the level of transit, but I do have some concern with the second part of the motion, which is to delegate authority to the CAO to reinstate the transit service, possibly all at once or incrementally. And the wording is actually that the CAO would have authority during the COVID-19 pandemic. We don't know how long the pandemic is going to last or how we're going to define the pandemic, whether we define the pandemic emergency or whether we leave that to the World Health Organization to say this is a pandemic. So I think that aspect of the motion needs some second thought. And for me, this is really a transparency and accountability issue. It's about openness. It's about how we make decisions during an emergency. And we heard during our open forum last week from a local citizen who was raising some concerns about openness and transparency in our decision making during this time. And also, council is traditionally the body which decides the level of service for the municipality. And the Ontario government moved very swiftly to make sure that municipal governments across the province can continue to govern through this emergency. And this is also for me about workload. Our CAO is extremely busy right now. I think the decision should lie with council about when to reinstate transit services. We wouldn't want to reinstate it too quickly. I have heard from some citizens who think that we shouldn't have any transit service at all right now, that we should be extra cautious. So again, I think any changes to transit should be a community decision made where the community has the opportunity to provide input to council before a decision is made. If we delegate to the CAO, the decision will be made, the change will take place, no one will know that the change is coming, no one will have the opportunity to input in the decision. If council receives a simple one-page memo saying there's a proposed change, it goes on the agenda, it's open, it's transparent, and people have the opportunity to comment on that decision before it's made. Also, I participated in an AMO call recently. It was a few weeks ago, and Fred Dean, who's a well-known specialist in municipal government in Ontario, he made a comment that really stuck with me, and he said local councils have been elected to govern and to govern through this emergency. And we need to do that. We need to step up to the plate and make those decisions and not delegate all of those decisions to staff who are working really hard and are incredibly busy at this time. So my preference would be to divide the motion or to strike out the second part where we delegate authority and to make sure that we continue to make decisions about the level of transit as the situation changes through this emergency.
So Councillor Chorley, you've put two options on the table. One, a motion to divide, and the other to request that that part be withdrawn. Can you tell me which your preference is?
I'm very open to what other members of council would like to do. If there's a desire to make an amendment and remove that, we can do that. Or I'm happy to put on the floor a motion to divide so that we can vote separately on those two aspects of the motion.
So are you comfortable if I just take your wording as a statement at this time here from the deputy mayor and proceed accordingly?
Yes, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay, deputy mayor, to you.
Before you go for me, Director Wills had her hand up, Your Worship.
Oh, sorry, I missed it. I apologize. Let me go to, then if I may, Director Wills, and I'll come back to the deputy mayor.
Thank you.
Director Wills?
Thank you. Just quickly through the chair, I just want to clarify what I was meaning about the second part of this motion. Mostly it is to cover small changes that might need to happen quickly. So since this is a new schedule that we're implementing, and I haven't heard any feedback yet about it. It's kind of been out there in the media already, and we haven't had anybody calling about it. But should there become a person that uses transit for essential needs such as work or appointments, if we need to slightly change the schedule to accommodate certain riders, that's where I was looking for a little bit of flexibility. So I'm not, by all means, I can bring back major changes to increases or decreases in service. I was always planning to do that. But if we had to make small adjustments, I mean, like half an hour or so to be a little bit more accommodating for our regular users, that's sort of where the flexibility I was looking for there. So staying within budget, of course, and just trying to be accommodating to the people that really need the service is what I was needing there. So if that's okay as an understanding, or if we reword it to incorporate that thought, that's fine with me, or you can remove it entirely as long as there's a little bit of understanding that that's what I was looking for.
Okay, Charlie, would you like to respond to the director, and then I'll go to the deputy mayor? If you have any comment based on her comment.
I appreciate, thanks, Mayor Henderson. I appreciate the clarification. I think it's great that that there is some thought to being flexible if there's anyone that we need to accommodate in the community. And I really would wonder whether we would need to make those kind of minor changes more frequently than council meets. Hopefully, we don't have to toy with the operating hours too much, because I think it can lead to some confusion. But council is meeting regularly now, and I'd hope there wouldn't be more changes than once a week, roughly. But if there's some wording that we can put in to make minor changes, I think there can be that flexibility.
Yeah, I'll go back to deputy mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I actually agree with what Councillor Charlie is saying, and also the clarification was welcome from Director Wills. But I do believe that any changes should come back to council. We are meeting fairly regularly now, and there's some confusion out there. I had an email this morning from a young woman who rides the transit quite often, and just a couple of days ago, she was the 9th person to get on the bus, and she had just done her groceries at No Frills, and she was basically told that she couldn't get on the bus because there was already 8 on there, and there's an hour wait between buses. So I told her, I said, you were really the first person I've heard. She did not want any reduction in hours. And I said, well, this is something that's come from Public Works, and we hadn't heard a lot from anyone. So possibly she did ask that some kind of signage be put on the transit. Maybe it's already there, I don't know, with these change of hours, so that possibly she can work her schedule around buying groceries, going to appointments, and trying to, understanding what time is the best time to catch the bus, what time is the best time to do groceries, just like we've all had to do. We stand in line to go into the grocery stores. And I think it's a change in habits, perhaps. But she says she's really concerned about seniors. They don't know what's going on. They're lost in the stores, and they don't know the new rules for transit. So possibly, Director Wills, if you could, or maybe they're already there. I apologize if they are, but the people taking the transit need to have some concept of what those changes in hours are, because they don't all get internet. They don't all on social media. And I think, we've got 13 participants today. That's probably all of us. So I don't know how many people listen to our council meetings, but I think it's important that we put some kind of signage there so that they know when the buses are running and what lines are running, so that they can change their schedules accordingly, because he said the seniors are still fairly confused.
And if I may, Director Wills, can I come back to you? Is there any kind of wording you would like to suggest as part of that would honor perhaps your thought for council's consideration before I move back to Councillor Chorley or any other member?
I mean, we can not have it at all if you
Okay.
like, as long as there's I mean, I think this conversation is enough, and if it's anything substantial, I would bring it back in writing anyway, but, or we can
Okay.
have it maximum a half an hour on either end of the timeframes. And just to your other point, Deputy Mayor, about signage, we do, every time we've made a change to transit, the shelters get signs, and we actually have a sign prepared already with these hours that I'm ready to print tomorrow morning and get posted tomorrow afternoon in preparation for this to be implemented on Saturday. So it's a little bit ahead notice, and there'll be a media release, and it'll be in the ad block as well.
On that ad block, Director Wills, I'm also hearing that perhaps we could, make the type a little bit bigger. Seniors are having a hard time reading it. There's so much in there, and I know there's so much going out, but maybe this could be directed to Ashley, but the type is not, it's hard to read, and there's a lot of color and reverse type, so that's also difficult to read. We have to make it as simple as possible, but thank you for putting those signs up there. I will email this individual back tonight and let her know that that's happening, so she's quite aware of what those schedules will be.
So Councillor Chorley, back to you. Based on the comments that have been provided, do you have a sense that you would like to either divide or withdraw that portion as a amendment?
Thank you, Mayor Henderson. I think based on Director Wills's comments, I think we can make an amendment to omit that section that delegates authority to the CAO, and that council will continue to make decisions about transit hours. But with some understanding that there might be a little bit of movement within half an hour if needed. If it's not possible to bring that back to council, then I think we all understand that there can be that little bit of flexibility in the hours.
Okay, so can I ask you to put that amendment on the floor, please, in your wording?
So the amendment would be to omit the final paragraph. I'm just wondering, Mr. Larmer, 1 second. It's not up at the moment. I'm just going to read it. To omit the final paragraph of the motion that reads, further that council delegate authority to the interim chief administrative officer to re-implement regular transit services incrementally or fully when required during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Okay, seconder. Councillor Barreau, further discussion? Seeing none, I believe we're clear in the amendment. All those in favor? Against? Carried. Back to you. Mr. Lar, do we have to read that again since we omitted a complete section for procedural?
I would say just go back to Councillor Darling to put it on the floor as needed with the second.
Thank you.
Vote on it.
Thank you. Councillor Darling, back to you.
Oh, you might be muted.
Sorry, is Councillor Darling there? I can't see him on my screen, but I'm assuming he's there.
Just unmute.
I couldn't find my, it
Okay.
didn't come up there. Okay. Do you want it read again, Brent?
You just say
Yes,
put
Mr.
as
Lar.
amended with the seconder.
Okay, then the motion for changes to transit be accepted as amended.
Okay, everybody clear on that? I'm assuming so by the nods of heads. Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Against? Carried. And back to you, Councillor Darling, for item number 2.
Okay. Item 2 is motion from the Committee of the Whole regarding the Town of Cobourg flood mitigation and sandbag policy. It's moved by myself. Whereas the Committee of the Whole meeting on April 6, 2020, Council considered a memo from the Director of Public Works regarding the Town of Cobourg flood mitigation and sandbag policy, Public Works Ops 1. Now therefore be it resolved that Council approve the flood mitigation and sandbag policy for the Town of Cobourg attached as Appendix A.
Seconder. Councillor Barreau, discussion. Councillor Chorley.
Thank you, Mayor Henderson. I do still have a few questions that I think we should discuss in a public forum, and I'd like to direct those to Director Wills. My first question is about the disposal of sandbags. I reviewed my notes from when our emergency planner, Shannon Murphy, presented to Council in June last year. And Ms. Murphy mentioned that it's very important that sandbags are disposed of properly because they can become contaminated. And I just note that the proper disposal of sandbags is not included in the flood mitigation and sandbag policy. I'm just wondering if there were any discussions about considering whether that should be included in the policy and why it hasn't been included.
Director Wills?
Thank you, through the chair. So the disposal of sandbags, we do have a little note in there for the role of the private property owner is to dispose of them safely at the appropriate waste facility. I did speak to the county about this, and it's typical for people would be able to get rid of their sandbags and sand at a landfill, but at a cost. So you would be expected to pay the tipping fees as if the sand and sandbags are waste material. Often you can deposit clean fill at a landfill for free if it's if it's clean material. But in this case, this would be considered contaminated, not in a sense of a hazard to the landfill, but just as it's like a waste material, like a garbage bag. So residents would be expected to pay the tipping fees to dispose of those sandbags. And the reason why we did mention that it was at the appropriate waste facility is specifically to highlight the fact that you can't just dump the sand in the ditch or along someplace to get rid of it on your own. You do have to dispose of it properly. We just didn't specify exactly which landfill or where, but that would be the expectation is they would have to dispose of it at their cost at a landfill.
Okay, Councillor Chorley, you had a secondary question, I believe.
I did, thank you. I've been following very closely what the municipality of Brighton has been doing, and I think it's really interesting. They obviously have quite a few properties that are prone to flooding, so they've been very active on this issue. But I noted that in December last year, the municipality of Brighton received a report from their staff outlining 3 different options and how they can approach basically their sandbag policies and practices. And the 3 options were, first of all, that they pay for sandbags and for the labor in deploying the sandbags. And that's what they did in 2017 and in 2019, but it was at great expense to the municipality. I think it cost them roughly $150,000 per year to do that. And the other option was that they supply sandbags and the sand. So they supply that at no cost, but residents need to obtain that sand and deploy those sandbags themselves. And the third option was to supply the sand and the bags at cost, so that the municipality would be a supplier, but would charge residents if they needed those materials. And the Brighton's Council did decide to actually go with the option of supplying the bags and the sand, but the residents now supplying the labor. So they have actually basically adopted the town of Cobourg's existing model. And this is the same model that we had last year. I believe the town put out a press release last year saying that we have sand available and bags to residents who need it. So my question is really about what is the impending reason for us to change our practice from making sand and bags available to residents when other municipalities like Brighton, are able to continue to do that. In fact, they've just opened 11 sandbagging stations across their municipality. They are a municipality roughly half the size of the town of Cobourg by population. So I'm just wondering, what is really driving the change in this practice in the town of Cobourg with this policy in front of us proposing that we don't offer any kind of materials to residents?
And is that directed to Director Wills, I believe? Director Wills?
Thank you, through the chair, to Councillor Chorley. So my understanding is that Brighton has the locations for their own infrastructure specifically. They stockpile in those locations so that they can easily access the sand. So those spots were determined based on their own sites where so that it's readily available for them. And then that is where residents can go and pick it up. It makes it more convenient for everybody. And typically our practice here in Cobourg is that we don't actually stockpile sand or bags for any other purpose. So we don't have it on hand. If we were to continue supplying it, we have to order it special, which isn't a huge deal, but in the past we have done this and we've not had any uptake. I mean, there might have been a few little, a bag or two here and there, but again, it's a pretty difficult thing for a resident to do, is come to a site and shovel it into their truck and take it back to their house and shovel it out of the truck and put it in the sandbags. It's very labor intensive. So my argument with that approach is, upon sourcing where you can get sandbags and sand yourself as a resident, it's approximately $14 for 25 sandbags, and it's approximately $17 per ton to order sand from a local aggregate pit. They will deliver it. You can order as much as you want. It's delivered right to your doorstep safely and on time and when you need it. For us to have it available, maybe we don't have enough, depending on how much people need and how often, we don't know what we're accommodating if people are going to take it up. And the logistics are just a little challenging. And if we were going to have chargebacks associated with this, it's how do we track it? And it's just because we haven't had much uptake in the past, and many other municipalities didn't. We were trying to keep things consistent across the board. I understand Brighton is doing something a little different. They have a much different scenario in their municipality, but for the rest of us, we were trying to be consistent so that when people are calling and saying, well, that's not what the county does, and that's not what my neighboring municipality does, it would be nice if we were all on the same page. And this was the page that the majority of the lower tiers and the county wanted to be on.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions, other members? Councillor Darling?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I agree with the Director Wills here. I mean, I've done sandbagging before, and it's a lot easier to have the sand delivered right to the site and fill the bags and put them in place at the site versus filling bags off-site and putting them into a vehicle or a truck, because they're very, very heavy. I think if I'm not mistaken, they're around 60 pounds a bag when they're filled. So it's a lot easier to do them on site, put them in a wheelbarrow or a cart and put them into place where they're needed, rather than fill bags off site and have to transfer them after they're full. So just a comment.
Okay, thank you for that. Other questions from members of council? Seeing none, the motion is before. So any other discussion? I'll go to Councillor Burkett, then back to Councillor Chorley.
Sorry, Your Worship. I was just making sure Councillor Chorley could speak there.
Okay, well, I'm catching that. I'm going left and right. Thank you for that. Councillor Chorley.
And thank you, Councillor Burkett, for making sure that my hand was seen. My final comments about the sandbag and flood mitigation policy that's in front of us is really about my concern about how sandbags are going to be deployed by residents during our existing COVID-19 emergency. We're already under a state of emergency, and it really does complicate how residents are going to be able to get bags deployed if they need them. Hopefully it doesn't come to that situation. Hopefully we aren't going to have the same levels of flooding that we had last year. But I did notice that the Ganaraska Region Conservation Authority has just issued a flood watch for our area along the lakeshore. So all indications are that we need to really be on the ball in terms of our response and mitigating a potential second emergency. And I really hope we won't have to face that. One of my concerns is that residents might struggle to source their own sandbags given the restrictions on the construction industry, but especially for labor, being able to hire labor to deploy sandbags. And one resident informed me that daisy chains, the traditional way of deploying sandbags, It's just not possible to do that with social distancing. So we already see one emergency complicating the way another emergency would be addressed. And I want us to be mindful of that, mindful of the wider context before we withdraw this service from our residents. So at this stage, I can't support this policy.
Okay, so noted. Other discussion from members of council? The motion is before. Does anybody need it read again? I believe it's quite clear. Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Against? Carried. I believe that takes us to item number 3. Still with you, Councillor Darling?
Sorry, Councillor Darling, just your mute. See if I can-
There it is.
There you go.
Okay, thank you, Brent. Motion 3 is a motion for your council regarding the award of Mathew Street reconstruction tender CO-20-02 DPW. Whereas the regular council meeting on April 14th, 2020, council considered a memo from the Director of Public Works regarding the awarding of the reconstruction of Mathew Street tender CO-20-02 Department DPW. Now therefore be it resolved that council approve and award a tender contract number CO-20-02-DPW to Bain Construction in the amount of $1,306,992.26 and approve a total offset limit for construction of $1,570,000, including non-refundable HST.
Seconder, Councillor Burkett, discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Against? Carried. And we're off to Arts, Culture, Tourism Services. So Councillor Burrow.
A motion from the Committee of the Whole regarding the cancellation of the Canada Day Parade on July 1st, 2020, and all related Canada Day activities. Whereas the Committee of the Whole meeting on April 6, 2020, Council considered an item of the cancellation of Canada Day activities within the town of Cobourg. Now that therefore be resolved that the Canada Day Parade to be held on July 1st, 2020 be canceled, and all related activities related to Canada Day in 2020 also are canceled as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Okay. Seconder, Councillor Beatty, discussion? All those in favor? Carried. We're now into bylaws, starting again with Councillor Beatty.
Thank you, Your Worship. Item number 1 is a bylaw for number 022-2020, and it's being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a development agreement with 1978327 Ontario Limited, Lakefront Utility Services Inc., and the Corporation of the Town of Cobourg. This is for the west side of Dodge Street, Lucas Point Industrial Park, and Cobourg. The action recommended is that Council adopt the bylaw number 022-2020, being a bylaw to authorize the Mayor and the Municipal Clerk to execute an agreement between 1978327 Ontario Limited, Lakefront Utility Services Inc., and the Corporation of the Town of Cobourg for the development of an industrial facility on the west side of Dodge Street at Lucas Point Industrial Park in Cobourg.
Seconder, Councillor Darling, discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. And we're on to General Government. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. That the following bylaw be passed. Bylaw 022-2020, being a bylaw to authorize execution of a development agreement with 1978327 Ontario Limited, Lakefront Utility Services Inc., and the Corporation of the Town of Cobourg. The action recommended that council leave be granted to introduce bylaw number 022-2020 and to dispense with the reading of the bylaws by the municipal clerk, and that the same be considered read and passed, and that the mayor and the municipal clerk sign the same and the seal of the corporation be thereto affixed.
Seconder, Councillor Beatty, discussion? All in favor? Against? Carried. And we're on again to general government. Deputy Mayor?
Under correspondence, the first item is a letter from the Northumberland Fair Share Food Bank requesting financial support for the Northumberland Fair Share Food Bank Cobourg location. And the action recommended, the council receive the correspondence from the Northumberland Fair Share Food Bank for information purposes, and that this letter be forwarded to the special budget review meeting on May 14th, 2020.
Okay, thank you for that addition. Seconder? Councillor Barreau, any further discussion? Councillor Beatty?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just maybe some information sharing with the rest of council. And I appreciate Deputy Mayor for you adding the referral to the May 14th budget review meeting. I had reached out to the board chair, Ms. Donovan, asking her for more information on what a specific amount of request would look like, given the various level of government aid that is to be coming through. And I know we'll be receiving more of that information through the mayor and his respective channels. But I think just a point of detail maybe for council to just to have in your purview when we prepare for the budget is the numbers being supported at the federal and provincial level will be divided through the federal and provincial agencies based on the numbers, which is in Link to Feed. This is a database that monitors usage of food banks in various regions. Port Hope Council has already approved the Fair Share Port Hope location of support of $5,000. And this is anticipated to be over and beyond what the provincial funding could be through their allocation. The Port Hope amount was calculated based on a ratio of 60-40. And if those same costs were calculated for Cobourg, there'd be a possible look at a contribution of $7,500 if we were to follow that usage ratio based on population and the local Cobourg location numbers. I just felt that was worth sharing with council to maybe give some additional context to the request for support from the Board of Fair Share.
Okay.
And if I may add to that for council's consideration, of course, grants are coming in from the federal level. I contacted our MP, Philip Lawrence. He's still working on a response. I contacted MPP Piccini, knowing there's funds at a provincial level that are being afforded to Northumberland County, to the service manager. I don't have the exact figures in front of me, but the allotment for the county inclusively was 1.37 million. But please remember that is to do their services, the food bank, special needs, nonprofits, charities. So it's quite a list. So I have contacted Warden Sanderson to ask, could he delineate what of that amount could be afforded to the food bank? Again, I don't have that answer, but as we do, I'll ensure that I share it with all members of council. I'm pleased to see that the Deputy Mayor has put the date in for May 14th. I feel that's a more appropriate date, certainly to work towards. Are there any other comments from members of council? Deputy Mayor?
Just if I could ask your worship that you have those numbers as we bring this forward, because it will probably be at the end of our budget discussion once we find out where we actually stand with the budget. And Councillor Beatty's 7,500, but if they're getting a substantial part of that 1.3 million, we don't know at this point, or when you find out, that gives you almost a month to find out. So hopefully you can bring that to us on the 14th.
Well, I remain hopeful, Deputy Mayor. Are there any other comments from members of council? Seeing none, I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor? Against? Carried. Back to you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. The next is correspondence is a letter from Joseph Gare, President of Affordable Housing Solutions Corporation, requesting deferral of all development and building permit charges for 82 Monroe Street, Cobourg. The action recommended that council receive the correspondence for information purposes and refer the correspondence to municipal staff for a report.
Seconder. Councillor Barreau, discussion? See none, all in favor? Carried. Back to you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. The third item is a letter from the Registered Nursing Association of Ontario, RNAO, requesting that municipal council, I lost my place here, proclaim Nursing Week from May 11th to May 17th, 2020 in the town of Cobourg. And the proclamation reads, the action recommended, whereas the health and well-being of people is the biggest priority for our community, and whereas in the town of Cobourg, nurses are an integral part of our healthcare system, serving residents of all ages with skill, knowledge, caring, and commitment. And whereas nurses have a unique perspective and a broad understanding of the concepts of good health, and whereas members of the national nursing community are recognizing the hard work and dedication of nurses in the town of Cobourg from May 11th to 17th, 2020, has been designated Nursing Week to acknowledge and promote the contribution of nurses in our community. Now therefore be it resolved, the Municipal Council of the town of Cobourg and the 19,440 residents of Cobourg residents do hereby proclaim May 11th to 17th, 2020 as Nursing Week in the town of Cobourg, and encourage everyone to recognize the many services provided by our dedicated nurses and the tremendous contribution they make to the health of our residents and the well-being of our community every day.
Seconder. Councillor Barreau, discussion? All in favor? Carried. And I believe that takes us to the notice of motion. And at this point, Mr. Larmer, who would you recommend, Councillor Chorley or Councillor Beatty?
I think Councillor Chorley can move that act recommended on the agenda. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the notice of motion from Councillor, do I just read this? Do I have to read the whole notice of motion or just the item?
Just the act
item
recommended.
that's showing.
Okay, so the notice of motion, Councillor Emily Chorley and Councillor Nicole Beatty, regarding a flood mitigation and response plan for the town of Cobourg. The action recommended that council refer the notice of motion to the April 20th, 2020 Committee of the Whole meeting for consideration by council.
Thank you. Seconder. Councillor Beatty, all in favor? Carried. And the next one is Councillor Barreau.
Sir, Your Worship, just want to call that vote again. For
Oh,
both warning.
I apologize. I'll certainly do that. All going back to the one that was just read. Does anybody need it read again? Not. Moving forward, I'm going to call a vote. All those in favor? Against? Carried. Does that help, Mr. Larmer? I apologize. Councillor Barreau.
Notice of motion by Councillor Adam Bureau regarding the Cobourg's Farmers Market operations. Action recommended that council refer the notice of motion to the April 20th, 2020 Committee of the Whole meeting for consideration by council.
Seconder. Deputy Mayor. All in favor? Against? Carried. Mr. Larmer.
Now, Your Worship, we have the council coordinator announcements.
Okay, first of all, I'd like to start by thanking the good citizens of Cobourg for their actions. I know we've been in emergency for almost a month or close to a month. I'd very much like to thank them for following the procedures and the health regulations. Certainly something that I've witnessed throughout Cobourg, and we want to recognize on behalf of council that you are doing exactly what we expect you to do. And on behalf of council and senior staff, I'd like to thank you. I'd also like to give a special greetings again to all first responders, those driving the buses, working in food stores, restaurants, deliveries, the list goes on. You are really providing essential services at a critical time. And I want you to know that our council is deeply appreciative of all your efforts and focus as you serve the rest of us. So again, our sincere thanks. In terms of the emergency control group, we have put out a public information hotline. I'll let council know later tonight when I finish my mayor's highlights. To date, we've had 45 calls. We're looking for number 46 and 47. So again, I'll read out the number in case you have any inquiry. It is 289-677-0585. I'd like to thank staff for manning those lines and taking those calls. I'd also like to thank the citizens for registering for Rapid Notify. As was indicated by Ms. Murphy, our emergency planner, we had over 12,000 hits as of last week. I also like to inform the public that weekly I have virtual conferences with all the other mayors and First Nation chiefs from both Northumberland County and Peterborough South. And I do my best certainly to update council based on all those provincial and federal initiatives. I hope and trust, like I did, you had a wonderful past weekend celebrating the Easter in yet a very unique, different manner, but nevertheless having hopefully some quality moments with your family. In terms of the emergency management, I also like to give credit to Ashley Purdy, working through staff who put out a number of signs throughout Cobourg. And you'll see them, the do's, the don'ts, explaining what is social distancing. I've received a lot of favorable calls, thanking us and thanking the team for bringing clarity to a situation of communication. And again, I do encourage calls to the mayor's office if you have any other concerns. I'm also want to be pleased that the education we're putting out there appears to be working. Unfortunately, we do have a handful where we do have to do enforcement. That is certainly not our choice. And the reason it's not our choice because the ticket starts at $750. By the time you add HST, you're well into the $800 factor. But I do want to emphasize once again that the citizens are really helping us move forward during this pandemic. You may have heard from Premier Ford today that he did extend the emergency order until May 12th. So we continue on. And at this point, my last hurrah, I'd like to give a shout out to Venture 13. A press release went out just a few days ago, thanking numerous organizations and businesses who are helping us with 3D printing, rapid prototyping from industries, and also the production of personal protective equipment, which is in everybody's concern and interest, especially masks and face shields. So again, it just shows how our community is coming together for the betterment of the greater community. And that is the end of my report. And from that, I'll take it over to the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you so much, Your Worship. Lots of good words in there, and I follow how we're doing compared to other communities our size. And I think social distancing is really paying off. A lot of people, it seems to be a common word now. We hear it every day. We certainly ask people, I see people doing delivery, and they across the street, there was a birthday party yesterday. So the packages were dropped off. The person dropping off the package went back 6 feet and they chatted for a while. So I think it's working. I think we're doing really well. The numbers are good here in Northumberland. So keep up the good work, everyone. I wanted to do just a shout out to the small businesses out there. I know that small businesses are struggling. A lot of them didn't think they could get through the 2 weeks, and now we're into a month, and now we've had an extension for another 28 days. I urge everyone to support small business, whether it's through buying something and having them deliver it, or certainly a meal. Kudos to Market and S'more. They completely redid their business model, and I've been there several times, social distancing, waiting for my turn to pick up my fresh produce and my fresh fruit. And certainly the lineups at the grocery stores. But it's the small businesses, especially downtown. The DBIA has if you want to check the DBIA Facebook, several of them, they're inviting people to buy just gift certificates for something down the road that you might need for a birthday or a Christmas. Our small businesses need our support. We want to make sure that we can still have a small business in our downtown at the end of this COVID-19. And I think we're all trying to do the best we can to make sure those businesses are still viable in another month, another 2 months, whatever this takes. And I will be sitting in for the mayor tomorrow for the emergency control group. So anybody has anything they need me to bring forward, please let me know. And the other shout out I wanted to give to the sewers in Cobourg and Northumberland who are sewing masks, they're sewing headbands. My sister sewed 130. She's not here in town, but she's a nurse, 30-year career. And they're all getting together, and sewing machines are very busy. I have a sewing machine downstairs. I haven't told anybody yet, but it's going to be put to work to make isolation gowns. That's what my daughters have asked me for, and that's what seems to be the need, as well as masks. So I have a pattern, and I'm just about to start, sewing. So if you don't hear me, answering my phone, that's where I am. But just kudos to echo what you said, Mayor Henderson. This is an amazing community, and I think we're all doing our part, and we'll get through this somehow, and hopefully sooner than later. That's it for me. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Beatty.
Thank you, Your Worship. I too would like to echo the spirit of our community, and more than ever, our resilient spirit in emulating our motto of Cobourg Strong as we persevere through this pandemic together. I'd like to thank Director McGlashan for providing some excellent verbiage for me to share a fulsome planning coordinators update. A few key things as we navigate the various orders coming from the province. So I'm just going to read my report, so please bear with me. 3 items. The first is regarding the feedback that has come out through AMO, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and numerous individual municipalities. The Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing has advised that the Ontario legislature is expected to pass new legislation in the coming days and weeks, which would allow municipalities to make decisions on land use planning matters during the pandemic emergency, if desired, using electronic and virtual channels as deemed appropriate to engage and solicit feedback from the public on such planning matters that require public engagement under the Planning Act. Council has received such the letter through the mayor from the minister. Second update is subject to the proposed legislation changes to the Planning Act by the province, as mentioned above. Previously, the planning department will revisit the processes that are associated with the Affordable and Rental Housing Community Improvement Plan, the Tannery Sustainable Neighborhood Master Plan, and the Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw, which are currently suspended during the emergency, including the convening of a virtual public meeting and implementing other public engagement opportunities to move the projects to completion as quickly as can be possible during this challenging time. And finally, although the planning department offices are closed to the public during this emergency, staff continue to be active administering and processing planning and heritage applications remotely via digital means and video teleconferencing, particularly subdivisions and site plan applications already in the system, with new applications expected in the coming weeks. Just a reminder that given the new construction, which is deemed non-essential under the province's emergency orders currently not permitted, conditions are such that a mini building boom may occur once the provincial restrictions are lifted or loosened. I'd also like to thank planning staff for also working and responding to applicants' calls even into the late hours on weekends. One of those being the Certo building, which I know we have an update from Director McGlashan as well, but because that's more rooted in property standards and not so much heritage, I'm going to allow not allow, but Councillor Burkett is going to speak to that in his report. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for that. Off to Councillor Chorley.
Great, thank you, Mayor Henderson. I think it is Councillor Darling next, is it not?
Oh, sorry, I jumped. My apologies. Thank you for correcting me. Councillor Darling, my apologies.
Didn't really matter. I was willing to wait. There's not much to report this month, except for the fact that the leaf and yard waste pickup for Cobourg Area 2 is the week of May 11th. So we're asking everybody, please do not put out your brown bags at the curbside until then. They get wet, they get heavy. It's still better than 3 weeks away. And I would like to personally thank all of the emergency workers and the great job they're doing. As everybody said, accolades to all. Otherwise, I hope all our citizens are coping well under the circumstances. And that's my report, short but sweet.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Chorley, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Henderson. I'd like to start by reminding citizens that most of our parks are open, but the activity allowed within those parks is extremely limited. So I just want to reiterate some of the messaging from the town to make sure that that everyone is aware. I just want to provide a list of what you can do in our parks. So you can, while social distancing, you can go for a walk, a run, or a bike ride through our parks, along paths or along the boardwalk. You can walk your dog with members of your household. And I just want to clarify what is prohibited in parks and public spaces. There are several things that you cannot do, and in fact, you could face a fine if you do carry out activities such as playing on any play structures, swings, slides, or any park equipment. There is no gathering of groups of more than 5 people. You cannot use the skateboard park, the dog park, basketball or tennis courts, or sports fields. You cannot use a park, a field, or the beach for any sports or recreational activities. And you cannot linger in any way, so no individual or group activities such as picnics and games, and please avoid using park benches. I'd just like to make it clear that some parks are completely closed to all activity, and that includes the Cobourg Dog Park off Ontario Street. And it's my understanding that the Cobourg Conservation Area has also been closed under the authority of the Ganaraska Region Conservation Authority. And all community gardens do remain closed at this time by provincial mandate. Regarding the marina, in line with provincial restrictions on recreational amenities, the opening of the Cobourg Marina and the Victoria Park Campground has been delayed until at least May 29th, and the boat launch is closed until further notice. The town is also working with the Cobourg Yacht Club to reschedule the boat lift-in date for early June. And the town of Cobourg is monitoring the situation closely and will reassess those opening dates in the weeks ahead. The Community Services Division continues to provide essential operations for the town's parks and the waterfront district, including dredging services, which will begin in Cobourg's harbor very shortly. And I'd like to provide a very quick update on a few key projects. The electrical upgrade at the marina, an RFP is being prepared by staff, and it will likely be ready to issue this week. Regarding the East Pier Revitalization Project, an RFP closed on March 24th. We did receive several submissions, and they are currently being evaluated by staff. A report will be brought to council as soon as the evaluation is completed. Regarding the Campground Enhancement Project, the creation of a draft RFP is currently on hold until the East Pier RFP submissions have been evaluated. And regarding the Victoria Beach Canteen tender, evaluation of the submissions is almost complete, but obviously the viability of the beach canteen this summer season will need to be considered before a new operator is selected. And that's everything from Parks and Recreation.
And if I could add, just, you didn't know this perhaps, it just came in tonight. Again, I'll be adding later this evening to the mayor's highlights. The premier also made that, I don't know how much we may have around Cobourg, but all Crown land now is prohibited from any form of entry or camping from the province as well. So If you could note that as well, Councillor Chorley, because the list each day seemed to be expanding. Thank you for that in-depth report. Councillor Burkett.
Thank you, Your Worship. I know the building department was working very diligently to try to provide some stats for the month of March. They did get them in to me late this evening, but I will report on them later. So although the building department offices are closed to the public, during the emergency, staff can continue to actively administrate and process and conduct inspection permits applications that were prior to the April 5th advised construction regulations put out by the province. Staff are working remotely via digital means and conducting inspections in the field while participating or practicing the social or physical distancing in the workplace protocols. Receipts of permit applications and plans review for new construction projects are still being implemented by staff. However, permits are not being issued for construction activity not deemed essential by the provincial government. As for the CERTO building, an update is in accordance with the property standards ordered issued by the chief building official. Remedial work is being undertaken to the building's roof by the property owners in the methodological manner under the supervision of the consulting professional engineer. However, due to some unfortunate circumstances, portions of the upper south gable wall collapsed. The owner and its engineer consultant subsequently enlisted the services of a historic brick mason to access or assess the situation. Communications of the owner's representatives has been ongoing with planning and building department and heritage staff regarding the interim measure, including inspecting, securing, and stabilizing the building and site where required, and sorting and stacking bricks for reuse, as well as long-term measures for form of comprehensive restoration and rehabilitation plan with reports and detailed drawings prepared by qualified professionals. Exact timelines for the restoration of the building is uncertain at this time due to the emergency and the fact that FV Pharma's corporate directive has been to scale back on their operations and prevent contract workers onto the property with exceptions of the emergency response personnel. As for bylaw, only one order has been issued under the emergency order tickets, but bylaw is working very diligently 7 days a week, and we commend them for doing so. As for the police, they're working hard. A lot of the public will see we're trying to do business as usual. We're still trying to crack down on the drug activity, and there was a significant bust in recent weeks. They're also running into scenarios where it's becoming issues for the members, and we are taking precaution with that. As reported recently, actually, in the news tonight, so the public is aware, and so the rest of council is aware, through police and I believe fire helped out as well. We've acquired some trailers for first responders and whatnot for them to stay in if a situation arises. And it will be noted that they are in the Cobourg campground. The chief of police has done a very good interview online, so I encourage the public to check that out. As for a report from fire, they're adapting quite well to the business. They're trying to obviously still respond and protect the town to the best of their ability, and obviously taking into precautions. Just a message from them to stay home, stay safe, check your smoke alarms. And everyone at home, this would be a great time to practice your home escape plan. I would just like to say that I am very proud of all of the staff working for the town of Cobourg currently in their efforts, as well as the frontline workers. And that is my report.
Okay, thank you for that. And Councillor Barrol?
Thank you. I as well want to give a heartfelt thanks to all the frontline workers and all the even grocery store workers, taxi cab workers, all of them that have to deal with work in this pandemic time. The art gallery, I want to start with that. We're having our first board meeting since this emergency this Thursday at 4 o'clock. And the library will be having their first board meeting since this pandemic in May, the first week in May, I believe. I don't have the date at it right now. Second, or third, I should say, the DBIA board has made me interim chair for until the new one gets chosen by the board. So the first thing I did today was ask for a membership meeting to go over all the different kind of effects that this emergency has had with all the different merchants and retailers, and also want to find out a good way to get together to find out what kind of marketing strategies they're doing that we could share with the other businesses downtown. That'll be happening on Friday at 10 p.m. or 10 a.m. sorry, on the 17th. If anybody wants to join, it's open to the public and all the members of the DBIA. If they email dbia@downtowncobourg.ca, link will be sent to you for a Zoom members meeting on Friday. And that's pretty much my report. We're going to be, good luck to everybody out there. That's what I got to say.
Okay, thank you. I believe that covers everyone, Mr. Larmer. And that takes you to unfinished business.
Your worship, so we have unfinished business there. You notice all the amendments have been made. I just want to draw attention to the council of the new additional tracking table I've added as an attachment to the unfinished business items. As we go out, we'll try to fill this out accurately just to reflect. Just for members of the public, it's a lot easier for them to track as well as council because it has links to the actual agenda meeting, the meeting date, as well as the minutes, and the actual recommendation that council passed for that action recommended to have that outstanding item to be brought back by council. Still working on some of the current completion dates. I'll have to send directors. I haven't done that yet just to update that. So you'll have an upgoing status on these, just a little bit easier and transparent to kind of see exactly everything's going on. So that's there for you. Just as I have the floor, your worship, I apologize. I just want to make one mention that committee of the whole meeting is scheduled for next Monday as well. So we're just catching up to our current meeting schedule just for the public and members of council. So we would usually skip a week, but we're carrying on for that week. So council meeting, committee of the whole meeting on the 20th, which is Monday at 6. And then we have next, your worship, the confirmatory bylaw. There's no comments from council.
Okay, thank you. Are there any comments on the unfinished business at this point from members, council, Councillor Burkett and Councillor Chorley?
I just want to say, comment on that report and that outline there. I just wanted, I'm going to assume it was the clerk that put that together, but that looks really great. Very appreciative of laying that out and seeing where it's at. Great job.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Chorley?
I would like to echo Councillor Burkett's comments. I was just going to say thank you to the clerk for a terrific addition to the agenda that makes it very clear, very transparent. So thank you.
And my compliments as well, because I don't know when Mr. Larmer has time to do that. I've been watching him. He's hopping like a bunny. So I can only assume he may have put this together over Easter weekend I hope not, Mr. Larmer. I hope you actually enjoyed some downtime, but I'm just amazed with all that you're handling as a person of one. You're able to put this together, and I know council appreciates this kind of overview, and I know I appreciate the color code, as I'm a color code kind of person that makes life really easy. So thank you so much. With that being said, we're going to the confirmatory bylaw. Back to you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. The bylaw 023-2020, a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting of April 14th, 2020. The action recommended that leave be granted to introduce bylaw 023-2020 and to dispense with the reading of the bylaw by the municipal clerk to confirm the proceedings of the council of the town of Cobourg at its regular meeting held on April 14th, 2020, and the same be considered read and passed, and that the mayor and the municipal clerk sign the same and the seal of corporation be thereto affixed.
Okay, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Chorley, discussion? See none, all in favor? Against? Carried. Before I call for adjournment, I'd like to also give a compliment to staff, to Mr. Larmer, to Ron Jeske, who is our IT person. Since we started this about a month ago, I find that the IT portion is working extremely well. To date, I've not heard as many concerns or complaints. So it shows us this new IT virtual format is indeed working, and my compliments to the people behind the scenes putting this together. On that positive note, I'll call for adjournment. Councillor Burkett, all in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone.